Okay, good evening, everyone here in Pakistan, and good morning for the people who are there, like for John. So today we have John Bishop with us. Like for people who are not watching this for the first time, I would be very delighted to introduce my self, even for people who are watching it for the first time, or even for people who are watching us not for the very first time. I'm Fatima Gilani. I'm the CEO and president of Read Pakistan. And with us today, we have John. I'm not going to spend too much of my time introducing myself, which I personally don't really like. But we have a very, very wonderful person with us, John Bishop. And John is somebody, first of all, I just didn't know, but John is somebody who loves cats, just like me. This is amazing. Yeah, so forget about the reading. We're going to talk about cats now.
What's more important? Yeah.
I don't know, just kidding. So for people who have just joined us or who are going to join us and going to watch us later on, let me give a very brief introduction about John. I didn't want to make it very brief, but for people who are going to, watch us, I know that you would really like to watch him speak rather than let me speak. Over the introduction, John was born in Houston, and the most wonderful thing about him is that he spent most of his time traveling, which makes him a very colorful, very versatile person. He's one of those people who've seen the world, been there, done that, and so I think today's session is going to be extremely special. He graduated from St. Thomas University in Houston and did his graduation work at the university and also obtained his master's degree from the University of Texas. So he's got all those colors that usually we're looking for. John has been involved in photography. So somewhere in the middle, we're also going to talk about photography, John, and creating creative writing and fine arts. And he's been there enjoying all these hobbies, these luxuries of life, of mental life since college. And he has spent good 30 years working as a librarian, which makes him the most special, most relevant person for Read Pakistan, as we all know that we are working on libraries, on the establishment of libraries, and also on inculcating the habit of reading in people. But for that, John is the kind of person, or people like John Bishop are the kind of people who must be invited. They must be invited to talk about reading, to talk about books, and this is how this is going to all bring the change. So he's been working as a librarian in Texas, New Mexico, California, Romania. I mean, there have been, I don't know, while I was going through your resume, John, this was a very nice feeling came to me that you've been to Russia, you've been to New Zealand, the Emirates, everywhere, and you've worked as a librarian. So actually, he's got the whole he's got the whole world on the palm of his hand. So now he's a full-time creative writer, and he's doing video and commercial photography. Not just this, he sort of follows his passion, and that's also definitely a full-time job that he is doing blogging, and he's doing poetry, and he's working on children's literature and painting and everything that's creative. So John's art centers around connecting disparate elements, binding them into new vocabularies, new stories, and I think that's about it, because I want him to speak more, and I want everybody who's really listening to us, watching us, I want everybody to know that John is definitely somebody who is going to make a difference. Now that you're going to watch him, he's definitely going to make a difference in your life as well, like he's done with Read Pakistan. Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Fatima. Great to be here. Thank you so much. What an amazing introduction. I want to know more about me too.
Oh yeah. You're wonderful. You're creative. You've got that energy that we all wish to have.
You left out all the bad things. Thank you.
It's so wonderful to have you. Oh, I see your cat roaming around, John.
Yeah, she will probably make more of an appearance. I apologize for that.
That's a very wonderful thing. It's very positive. So is she
Yeah,
a good reader?
she does. She interacts with books quite a lot, I should say.
Yes,
She likes
that's
to get
because of
behind them on the bookshelf.
no, this is great. This is wonderful. I wanted it to be a very decent, formal kind of an introduction, but definitely I can't control, my emotions of excitement. And I'm very happy that you have really extracted time. For people who don't know, John Bishop is kind of a person who's 24/7 working on various different elements for the different genres and different creative things. And for creativity you need a lot of gray matter and definitely a lot of time and energy and patience. So all of this comes in the package with John. But it's really an honor, John. First, I would like to thank you a lot on behalf of personally, saying it from myself, but on behalf of Read Pakistan as well, that you've extracted time for us. It is definitely something that we were looking forward towards because of your versatility of experience, all over the world. So thank you very much. I'm really, really indebted.
Oh, thank you. And what a great job you guys are doing. I'm very impressed and encouraged. Let me know how I can help further.
Oh, yes, yes. So they're like, oh, starting up with this. So there are a lot of things. No, yeah, definitely. I know that you would be the kind of person who would really step forward and help us out in a lot of things. And top of the line is intellect and sharing your intellect, which is something, people are not very willing to do because they want to reach to the tops, to the heights, to the tops of the world, but they want to do it alone, unfortunately. Okay, so John, I'm going to start with a very, very common question, you would say,
Sure.
or maybe something which has been oft repeated, but it's always good to hear your story with books, how you started up, how you started as a reader, how you became a reader, and your connectivity with books, how it all started. Let's hear that first.
You bet. And my story, I'm going to say, is very different from many that I've heard, and particularly in my profession, because I did not grow up in a house where we read. I grew up in an educated household. My mother was a teacher. My father was an engineer, but we did not read. We had books in the house available, but we, as a family, I didn't get a lot of modeling for reading. And I think the schools in Houston at the time, I wasn't inspired to read much growing up in school. And so I came to reading actually when I went abroad. I was in an exchange program in Spain. And in learning the language in Spain, I was also reading the literature as part of my education in Spain. And I became so enamored with the ability to learn about the cultural aspects of the people I was living with in Spain. And that was not available in the language part. And so this whole world of what it meant to be Spanish was opening up to me through looking at their literature. And so I just began to say, okay, I have a limited time here because it was only a year program. So I started buying lots and lots of books and shipping them home because I knew I could read them later.
Wow.
And so that was kind of my introduction to really literature that was changing my life, because it was changing the way I could see the world around me and interact with the people that I met. So that was huge for me. Came back, started the university, and of course was studying Spanish and reading all those books I had shipped home and new things that were presented through the literature courses at university. But one of the pivotal moments for me was that I was at the dormitory, and I was going to my truck, and in the dumpster was filled with books. Somebody had thrown away an entire dumpster full of books. And I thought, well, that seems like a shame. So I said, maybe there's something I'd be interested in. So I backed my truck up to the dumpster and I jumped in and started, finding things that I thought were interesting. And what had happened was there was a priest who was a teacher at the university, And his aunt, he had her entire book collection. She passed away. He had them in boxes. He passed away, and people just threw all these books away. So what I found as I found books that I found interesting, what I found was that in each of the books, they were filled with small bits of paper, tickets, airline ticket, well, not airline, ship, because it was older than that, and receipts and letters and correspondence, and this whole life of, her name was Elizabeth Moore, and she was a woman who lived in Houston during the 30s. This was a period from about the 30s to the 60s, and she was trying to become a writer. And this life became kind of grew out of the books that I was finding. So I started putting more books. I kind of filled the back of my truck and then went through them all and extracted all the pieces of paper and kept the ones that were relevant to me. So that whole idea that there was a way to kind of interact with books in a collection became hugely important to me. And so as I started to have this love for books, and that was combined with this love for reading literature, my world really, really expanded in my college years. And I just embraced the arts as much as possible. That's when I started writing. That's when I started, obviously I was reading, and that's when I was starting doing some acting and some painting, poetry. All those things were happening at the same time. It was a really good time in college. So that's kind of my history with books, and turned into a career, and look behind me.
Yes, I can see all around you. Actually, that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Okay, while we were discussing your profile, with the people who were listening to us, well, what I've noticed, Mr. Bishop, is that you're a writer. Of course, you're a creative writer, and I feel that people who are writers, usually when I interact with people who are writers, or I interact with writers who have already written a lot of books, and well, so I see this aroma around them, that they keep on saying that yes, there has been a very deep link between reading and writing. So for you, what has been that focal point? What has been that the limelight in which you were there, and then there was reading, and then there was writing, and you connected both of them together? What do you think? Are they linked? If they're linked, to what extent do you think you would weight that? As in, what weightage will you give to each, and to both of them being connected?
Oh, I think they're intimately connected, and you can't do one without the other, or you certainly shouldn't. Again, going back to that period in my time, all of my coursework in Spanish literature and in English literature, I was also needing to write academically. So I would be doing my reports and my theses, as well as creative writing as part of my assignments. And I really, really enjoyed that. I started to feel as though I could really express things through writing, and that there was a real art there. Obviously, I was reading those things, so I was getting great modeling. But when I would try and do it, I was doing it predominantly in Spanish, and it became a real passion of mine. And I remember one of my professors said, John, you're doing fine, great, continue, but you're never going to be a Spanish poet. You're never going to become a Spanish novelist, because your language is English. Continue to do this for your Spanish knowledge and for your growth, but you should be writing in English as well. And that's really I took that advice to heart. And I would say that as you write, you must read. You need that input. You need those ideas. Keeping a journal is incredibly important. And I started journaling then. And a journal for a writer is like a sketchbook to an artist. You need to hone those skills, because writing is more than just spilling out emotion. I have lots of emotions that nobody needs to know about, and certainly are not artistic or edifying. So the idea that I can turn this incredible bit of knowledge that I'm getting and the feelings that I have inside and craft them into something new. That to me is where the art comes in. And you can't do one without the other. I can tell you as a painter, I look at paintings all day long that other people are doing, and they will spark an idea or an emotion in me, or a technique that I haven't tried before. And those things are skills like building muscle. You have to use them again and again and again in order to get better and better. And so the idea that you could approach writing without being well-read and an avid reader, those two things don't go together. And if someone attempts to do that without being a good reader, it comes through. And they're generally not going to be a very good writer. It's just those two things are inseparable, in my opinion.
That's such a wonderful way of putting it forward, because we read a lot of material, which is usually I see that kind of lagging in the newspapers nowadays. And
Yes,
because
yes.
journalists are the kind of people who are usually the people who are coming through every day, and so you read one or the other, or you listen to one or the other, and we see that there's a lot of research still missing. And you've so nicely
Yes.
put it. It's like John, I don't ever say it in the middle of the session, but how you'd answered question number 1, which was like so brilliantly. I kept, while you were replying to this second question of mine, it kept, coming back to me, what you just, the kind of story that you told me, and it's real life story. It's amazing how that lady and how you in that place and time were present there. I mean, it's like something which was, I don't know, it's a kind of a small miracle that you were there, and you
Yes.
got all that, you got all that, you got all that material, you got all that connection, and then you connected with the soul of that lady. I just
Absolutely.
know, I don't know. Yeah, so I can actually feel that inside. It's wonderful. You were so right about that I've never heard anything like that before, really. And now for the second question as well, you've so nicely put it into words that we need to connect with reading and writing. And if there's a major lag, and you would see it through, it would come through, just everybody would be able to judge that this person is not a very good reader, or he hasn't done a lot of research or a lot of reading. Correct. Which is most important. So for people who are becoming writers, even in Pakistan, even abroad, just please keep this in mind, that both these things are quite related. I'm just going to state Imam Ghazali, that he used to write 7 pages each day, and at the end of that, he would always make a crux of all the examination that he would have done. So see how many books he was reading, as in. I'm just connecting it through with a lot of things that are popping in my head. And well, another question that I'm going to put forward to you, John, this is going to be a very interesting session for people who actually have the knack, and they actually have, they know what we're talking about. They're really going to enjoy this. So, and tell me, I really want to discuss this one very important event, which is unforgettable. Like you've been traveling.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of traveling. So I just want to know that, where did you actually, does anything click into your mind which was really unforgettable as far as the library? Like, see how you started up with you becoming a reader, with a very interesting, it's a very interesting event that occurred in your life. So okay, but as a librarian, do you remember something which was really intriguing, that was really important, that would just, you would just, with a snap of fingers, it would just come back to you that, yeah, this happened. So I want you to share that as well with the people who are listening to you.
Delighted. One of the things about getting older is you have this long view of things. I started in libraries when the computers were just being introduced. And I thought, gee, I wonder what would happen if we introduced computers in libraries. So there's this long view of what librarianship has meant over the years, and it's changed dramatically. When I started in libraries, there was no internet. And so people would come to the library with him to find information. We were the conduit. We were the internet. We were Google at the time. And so I remember a day when I was working in the library and a woman came in very upset. She had just been to the doctor. She had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I was the first person she talked to because when she left the doctor, she came to the library because she wanted to find out how long she had to live. And that role for me, that was my role, was to connect her with that information and to be somehow compassionate enough and understanding enough to realize who I was talking to and what she was going through. That doesn't happen anymore. The people go to Google now. They go to if they have that kind of news, and hopefully now with medicine, maybe the news is better these days. And a second one that really surprised me again, because I felt like I had just done my master's. I was introducing computers and barcodes and the whole mark records in libraries. And I felt very, very sophisticated. And I was working at the library in New Mexico, and a woman came in who could not read. And she had a letter from her daughter in Mexico. And she wanted me to read her the letter. And the letter was informing her that she was a grandmother and that the baby was fine and everybody was great. It was very good news as compared to the woman who had cancer. But those kinds of moments to me absolutely shaped why I was a librarian, because the idea that I was connecting people with the information they needed rather than the information I thought they should have, because I wasn't coming as a teacher, I was coming as a librarian to that interaction. And then to be able to build collections that actually spoke to the needs of people in a community, I found fascinating, particularly when I started to travel and those communities changed dramatically from place to place. And to see the needs of a library, how those needs change depending on communities, and how you approach providing that in different communities with different abilities and resources. So those things have been very, very important to me as a librarian.
That's very important. It's very empathetic, and I think the way I can understand the first person that you talked about, because my mother, she was diagnosed with the same, and she had cancer.
I'm sorry.
And no, it's okay, but of course it's something which is it's not something very pleasant, and for communicating it to a person who's very lively, or of course you're
a complete stranger.
Yes. And
she had to come to a complete stranger and pour forth these emotions that she wasn't even ready to deal with.
Yes.
That to me was very touching.
Yes, of course. So yeah, I mean, it's very extremely important, and for people. But I find, I don't know if you would agree with me, John, but I think that kind of empathy, even yes, you say that libraries have been replaced, like the books, the paper of the book, the paperbacks, the hard copies, they've been replaced by yes, you're right, by Google maybe, and by ebooks and by audiobooks. But what I feel is that with those coming in, there's a lot of empathy gone out of the window too. So that's gone. I want you to advise those librarians. By the way, I haven't come across even one librarian who would be empathetic, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yes. Oh no. I still have to see a lot of world. So yeah. So so I feel that there's a lot of lag, and one of my very good friends, she unfortunately she also had pancreatic cancer. She passed away 1.5 years back, and yeah, so she was a librarian, and she was amazing. She knew books on the she had books on fingertips, and she would know the system, she would know what to do and everything, and she was also empathetic. But she was the only one, unfortunately, who I can refer to as a good librarian, not because she was my friend. We became friends because she was a librarian, and I used to go and visit. Yes, yes. So, so this one thing, but I want you to give advice, one, maybe two, whatever you think is important, three maybe, to the librarians of today. When there's Google, when there are audiobooks, when there are books that, you can just simply, you know, there are a lot of other information centers. We just don't need to go to the library. But when a person comes in, because I feel that when we go, there is no, there has to be more than just welcoming. As in, I'm not talking about myself. For people who are new, fresh readers, they've just entered the area or realm of reading, and for a librarian, what would you suggest? How to make people better readers? And how would you just suggest two or three things which are most important for a librarian to have?
Well, I think the first thing, and I've hired many a new librarian, and one of the first things I would always tell them is you must remember that no one asks the question that they want the answer to. They're always asking another question when they begin. So it's your job as a librarian to start to really listen to what people are asking, because they're coming to a person not knowing an answer. And so they don't necessarily know how to pose the question. And that's not to diminish them in any way. And nobody wants to look foolish or uneducated coming up to a stranger. So you must, as a librarian, you must look deeper to understand what it is the person needs to know. And then your most important job is to connect the person with the information. It's not for you to somehow insert yourself, your opinions, your philosophies into that transaction. You need to understand what they really need to know, want to know, and get them to the right information. And that can be a difficult path because they don't know what it is they need to know. That's why they're there. So that to me is the first bit. And the second bit is to never forget that it's not the book that's the important part. It's the stuff inside. So it's the information. So many times librarians in the past would get lost in the physical book, in the cataloging, and in putting the right number on the spine and those kinds of events. And that can make them seem very distant, and in fact, make them very distant to the customer who walks in. And today, they get lost in the technology. They get lost in the gadgets and in the process and they can intimidate people without even knowing it, because no one knows the systems as well as they do. And I can remember talking to people who were dealing with computer programs and digitizing collections, and they couldn't talk to a person intelligently about what they were actually scanning or producing or cataloging, because they hadn't read it. So I would say, as a librarian, you need to keep that customer-centeredness in mind. Even if you don't work in customer service, if you're not at the front desk, you need to be thinking about the content and the information more than the process and the physicality of how that information is presented. So those are the two things I would caution librarians. The real joy and the real benefit that a librarian provides is being that guide through all the information that is available these days, and getting people to where they need to be, and getting them the information that they need. And that's what they will appreciate. They don't care how much I know about books or how sophisticated my computer systems are.
No, that's such a wonderful thing. I wasn't expecting this kind of answer. I think these are, yes, the most important things, because if I go to a library, I think I would be looking for the same. Yes, if I don't know the answer, probably I'm not even setting up the question right. So yeah, I do agree with you. So John, another thing, it's very important for the youth, for the third world countries as well, because we unfortunately fall in that category. But even all the world round, youth is one area, I would say, that needs a lot of focus, because
Certainly.
they're very distorted. They have their own ideas. They're very energetic, but they don't know where to, infuse that energy into, instill that energy, put it in the right direction, and so on. What, as a librarian, are the suggestions going to be for making them better readers?
Well, I think the first, and I was a writing teacher as well, and an English teacher for a few years before I entered libraries. And one of the things I noticed is it doesn't really matter what you read. Your brain processes reading regardless of what you read. Now, I, as a librarian, as a teacher, parents and community leaders, they care very much what you're reading, and you should listen to them and take their advice, or for people who know a lot. So the physicality, the process of reading, that the honing of that muscle that is your brain that is reading, work that every day. Find something to read. And though it doesn't matter, you can start to find genres that interest you, because that is what will engage you with reading. Now, I would run into people, particularly boys, who wouldn't really be that interested in reading. And so I would have to find ways to lure them in and catch their attention so that they would start to read. And maybe that would be books about sports, maybe it would be nonfiction. If not, then there were books like graphic novels that have quite a bit of writing, but they're also visual and could be a stepping stone to get people into reading. And there's nothing wrong with reading graphic novels. But if you want to progress, and you will start to find things that interest you. And as I say, at the same time, I hope you're journaling and keeping a track, because that relationship you have with what you're reading will last your entire life. And that's one of the things I was talking about today, about they become part of your intellectual history. And how you track that. I mean, I started collecting books. That may not be something everyone can do because of space or finances or whatever. That might not be the way they track, or if they're doing most of the things online. But you should be tracking your own intellectual history. If that's creating lists, creating a notebook of all the things you've read and the things you've liked, and things that have been recommended, you can keep those lists, because that becomes your CV, your history intellectually. And that has changed a lot because of the internet. And you mentioned the media. I mean, it used to be that you would sit and read an expose, or you would read some sort of commentary, and it would inspire you or educate you. Now things are into such small bits that you can't possibly go into depth. And so people just skim through knowledge. And I think we see some of the catastrophic results of people who are turning their back on intellectualism, and just going for the soundbite. And I think that has been a real problem. I blog, and I enjoy blogging, and I try and write a decent composition. And no, that's not what people want. They need little bits with lots of pictures. And I thought, I'm not sure I want to write that. That's not that interesting to me. But that's what people recommend when you're writing blogs. So I guess the other thing I would really say, particularly for young people, is you're fine where you are. You're not behind. You're not, you don't have to worry because you don't have a lot of background. Maybe you're not a great reader. You're fine just where you are. Start from where you are today and start to build on that. And only judge yourself. Don't let other people judge you. Just build your own interest, your own academic or intellectual life. And that will bring you the rewards. I mean, I can remember when I was reading the books from Elizabeth Moore, and I have a couple of them here, and she was a great traveler. And so I was reading all of the books that she had about travel from the 30s. And I thought, this is fascinating, because I never would have, of course, I was very interested in travel anyway, but I never would have picked up books like this, but for her kind of connection. And so that was my path. I remember also I taught I taught some kids in the 7th grade who were considered special education. They weren't physically handicapped in any way, but they hadn't been prepared in their education. And they kept telling me, I don't understand. How do you know what to look for when you're looking at a story or a novel or whatever it is we were discussing? And they couldn't make that connection. And so I started talking to them about Star Wars. They could tell me every character, every plot, every nuance in plot line, in storyline, they knew everything that I was looking for as a teacher when they read a book. They just hadn't read a book. And so that ability to keep building your skills, the more you read, the better you read, and the more you'll get out of it. And so I would say, don't let anyone discourage you. You're not behind. If you don't have access to books at home, go to the library. I remember in college, I would have my section of the library, the things were the books that I liked. I would hang out in that section and I would read books, and other people would come to that section. And I automatically started to feel a kinship with other people who shared the same interests. I suppose we do that in chat rooms and things online, but not in the ability to go deep and to increase our knowledge. We just kind of skim over lots of things in our intellectual lives. And so that would be my advice. Find people of like mind and go deep. Build your skills from wherever you are. Start today.
Oh, that's super. That's super wonderful. It's a perfect advice, John. I also want to talk about we've been going. Well, unfortunately, we're skimming through the topic too.
Oh,
But I
that's
had
life.
to ask you so much. I had to ask you so much because there are a lot of people who really want to know. And then they would really like to know about you, and then they would really like to know a lot of things that are related with your genre, and then they would like to pick up the relevant stuff for their implementation, or for them to actually get access to a lot of things which become really easier are the ones that that are the ones that you listen to from other people, from the horse's
Certainly.
mouth. Yes. So it becomes easier for them to grasp those ideas. So about the topic now, let's talk about intellectual CV, the kind of topic. It was very interesting for me because the for the viewers who are watching us, this is the topic which I have already talked about, the things which were of our interest, but at the same time I wanted John to actually give out something that is of from his realm. So what happened that when he suggested the topic, I was looking at it and I said, interesting, but okay, I'm going to talk about this. This is very good, but okay, fine, we'll talk about this. So there was 2-3 question marks even in my mind, while looking, but I didn't want to bother you. I really wanted to stay inquisitive till the time that we were actually talking live. So first of all, let's talk about intellectual CV. How would you explain that to people who are listening to you?
Okay, well, I'll start with the story because stories are everything, right? Yeah. So I was listening to a academic speak one day, and he was talking about the Aztecs, the Indians in Mexico, and that whenever they would go somewhere, whenever they would move or migrate, they would carry what they call the sacred bundle. There was this big kind of bundle of things that were important to the tribe, and they would carry that out in front as they moved forward. And so the question then became, well, what is our sacred bundle? Do we have a sacred bundle in our society, in our culture? And the guy thought for a moment. He said, yes, libraries. Libraries are our sacred bundle. The library serves no real function It doesn't help you govern. It costs money. It takes a lot of upkeep. It changes constantly. It is something that we value as a culture enough that we put it forward no matter what. We're not going to cut the library. And even people who don't use the library want a library. Somebody had said once that to a group of librarians that if you look at a particular city in the US, 80% of the people in that city have a library card. Now, 80% of the people don't necessarily use the library regularly, but we found that people use libraries intermittently throughout their lives. You use it as a student because you need support with your academics. Then you go to college, you need libraries, and then you may drop off a bit. Then you have your first baby, and you need the library because you don't know how to take care of a baby, or you need to plan a wedding, or some life events start to happen, and those relationships with that collection of books or information follow you throughout your life. But what I think is interesting are the things we collect. And if you look at the shelves behind you, you have a lovely display of things that matter to you because you find them interesting, or maybe you have a personal attachment to them. I do the same things with books, and I think a lot of people do. Do you still have books from college? Do you have college textbooks?
Yes, I do actually.
Will you ever get rid of them?
I don't think so. I've got Milton, I've got
here's
Bacon.
one of my library management books. I don't need this book anymore. It's completely outdated. It's been on my shelf, and will go back on my shelf when I finish this call. So
Yes.
there are certain things that we keep as kind of mementos or history of who we are academically, intellectually. And that changes over time. I have an example here. When I was in my 20s, I decided that I was going to learn Latin because I needed a classical language. And so I have a bunch of books in Latin. I never learned Latin. I am now 61 years old. I'm not going to learn Latin. I'm just not going to do it. But I still have the books in Latin. Why? Because they're part of my history, and they remind me as I scan them that they are important to me. They're part of my sacred bundle, I suppose. Used to be that people would come to visit and they would scan your bookshelves to see what kind of person you were. And very often you would bring people who were waiting into the library to sit and wait before you have an appointment or while they're waiting for you to get ready or whatever. And they could scan your shelves to understand the kinds of things you were interested in and the background that you have. And that can be used. Remember in The Great Gatsby, there was a scene where the narrator looks at Gatsby's great collection of books, and then he pulls one off the shelf and he realizes none of the pages had been cut. None of those books had ever been read and couldn't be read because the pages had not been cut. And I think of places here, I don't know if this happens elsewhere, but people sell books as decoration, and you can buy books by the meter to decorate your home. So there's a historical and a cultural value for books that is strong enough in our culture that people will try and use them to give a snapshot of the kind of person you are. Now, not everybody collects books, but certainly online, you're lacking some of that ability. But I do believe that you need to be writing down all of the books you're reading, all of the books that you enjoy, all of the books that have been recommended. I said that before, in some sort of journal. Keep a history of how you are interacting with the world around you, because that becomes, as you get older, a way for you to encapsulate what it is you have learned, where you have been academically, intellectually, and you can go back and look at them again. You change as you grow older. I can look at a novel that I read in my 20s, I can reread it now, it's a different book because I'm a different person. But it's all there on my shelf because it's part of my past. I think that's a fascinating concept. I believe that the things we put on our shelves show our values. And I think it's just a very, very interesting way to review your own life and your own past, and mark some sort of relationship. I have a book here I wanted to show you. Here is a book from Elizabeth Moore, and it was owned by somebody who's written their name in it, by Dan J. Carmichael from Des Moines, Iowa. And then I put my name next to his because it's now part of my life. And I added my own Ex Libris sticker. So I now have a relationship with this book, this physical object, and the information within it. And I don't have to save it anymore. I now feel for the first time I could pass this on because my relationship, my history is somehow acknowledged with this piece of information. And so that's what I was talking about as building kind of this intellectual CV, your history with what you've read. I think that becomes very, very important as you grow older.
That's so true because yes, it becomes. So basically, the question that you asked was that whether I've kept those books, and
Sure.
I immediately had that in mind that I've kept, even, just sharing it with you and of course with the rest of the people as well, John, that I have quite a number of books that belong, because I have done my master's in English literature. And so I was going through Bacon, I was going through Milton, I was going through even the modern, literary people like Sylvia Plath, maybe just for reference, and so on. So when I was doing, I was doing a lot of reading. I realized that, Bertrand Russell can never go away from my life.
Absolutely.
Once I read him, I was like, no, he's not going anywhere. I still have him. And then, okay, one book was suggested to me. Okay, just go through the essays of Bertrand Russell, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, no, I need to read more about this guy because he's amazing. That's what I think.
Sure.
And then I had the essays of Bacon. I said, no, wait a second, so on. Then I had the modern poetry and I said, Sylvia Plath, whoa, who is this lady? And I, start reading about it. And I still keep all these people. They're all with me. And and I feel that yes, even if you've read them at one part in time, they are there for the rest of your life. And now when I picked up a book of Milton, say for instance, or maybe I can just say, even about a book in linguistics, because I did my MPhil in linguistics. So if I pick up syntax, trust me, I was running away from syntax like anything. I said, oh my God, I don't. And my professor, I must appreciate him. He was the one kept on calling me, really. He's like, no, Fatima, you can do it. You just have to come to the class regularly because you just, you run away. What's wrong with you? And I would say, no. His name was Naveed. I said, no, Professor Naveed, you don't know. Syntax is it's a person who tries to kill me. And he was like, no, just have some. The credit off to him that he would always be there telling me. And then of course they were friends in my MPhil class, and they would always push me, oh come on, syntax is not that difficult, all you need to do is just not understand it even a bit and just memorize it. And I said, I don't know how to do that. I have a literature background. I don't know how to just memorize it without knowing what I'm memorizing, and so on. So things like those. But all of that, now when I pick up a syntax book, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Somebody has really worked his head off, his time. I don't know, it's so much. So yes, I completely, vouch for that, what you're saying, that it becomes your person. It's you actually at different moments, and you actually, you've been living there. And at the end, now that I have a son, and the things have really evolved. Now, when I pick up a book, it's not for getting scores. It's for just knowing myself better, or knowing life better, or knowing, oh, my son needs to learn this or that. So I need to be somebody perfect in this or that if I want him to learn, and so on. So many other things come along as well. And I feel, yes, this is amazing. And everybody needs to, whoever people, just make two things which I really appreciated, John, were that one, you said that you need to have a journal with you all the time.
all the
Maybe,
time.
just all the time, yes. And because I have my law degree as well, so what lawyers do is that they're carrying journals, and then they have people hired, and they would carry these much bundle of journals right behind the, the lawyer, Mr. or Miss Lawyer, and they would come along. But yes, it's very important to have a journal. And the second thing, which I find, it's a very part of your intellectual capability to be enveloped in a better way, is that yes, you keep a journal, but also you keep yourself very, yes, this is my book. This used to be me 15 years ago. Today, this is me. Now, there are very few books, I believe, and also the research says that there are very few books that actually have the capacity that they can be read like 3 times or 2 times. So mostly we just read a book one time, but I find that a lot of people are very good. I mean, I wouldn't read Jane Austen maybe like 2 times because I find her very homemade, or I don't know.
No, I get it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't, but I'll still keep her though, so that if I want to impress somebody by saying that, oh, I read her as well, then maybe, yeah, or so on. But yes, you have to have that intellectual resume or your intellectual capacity, and you have been, and it's very nice that you develop it since like about 15 years ago. And everybody has that kind of capability because you've been going through the college, you've been going through the school, so you must be having some details about what you have been reading, even if you're just reading the textbooks. So yes, I think it's very important. What do you think that you are going to suggest for people who are spending most of their time on Google, on books which are audio books, and just quickly, so that because that paper, that's, I really love paper books, so
I
so
do
that I can
too.
carry them to the, it's a world in there. I don't know why. And I read a lot of researches on that too, John, that, why is this feeling in me? And is it with other people as well? And if it is, then why is it there? And I realized that, 70% of the people would say that, we would like to have a book in our hand. Even a research I remember of Gilani and Gallup said that even though 75% of the people in Pakistan, this is a research, and they said that they would not read books at all. For the rest, 25%, they would read books, but that would be textbooks. So only 0.0001 or 2% would be the ones who would be reading real books, as in, of course, real books,
Yeah.
but some reference books or something with interest. So they would always stick with how to get better grades rather than getting something which
Sure.
can give them for pleasure.
And that's very important. You should get good grades. That you need to give your professional life, if it's learning your law degree or if it's during your medical degree or whatever it is you're pursuing, you need to spend the time doing that kind of research that is all nonfiction and will make you a better professional. Absolutely, you should do that. That doesn't necessarily feed your soul, and there are other things that you could be reading that do that, and that comes with trial and error. I mean, for example, I love mysteries, but I don't love mysteries. I don't seek out mysteries. I know people who only read mysteries, and good on them. That's fine. But I don't read that many mysteries. I like books. I like novels that are about people and about what they feel. I think my favorite author, probably not one that most would say, is Louise Erdrich. And the book that actually, the first book that I can remember being embarrassed because I was laughing out loud in an airport was The Beat Queen by Louise Erdrich. And that hooked me on her, and I've read everything she's written since. But I read certain things because they are classic, good books. I also had an occasion to teach boys. They were all 9th grade boys, the last period of the day, right after they all came from the gym class. And I thought, this is a terrible thing. I had to present great expectations. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be just a disaster. They loved it, because you have to be able to trust that a great book is a great book. And that story is going to engage them. It wasn't about what I taught. It was a great piece of literature. And it had everything. Because there were no girls in the class, they were able to think about love and relationships in a way that if it had been a mixed group, they probably would have shut up. But they were able to express questions and express their feelings. And of course, it had old ladies who caught on fire. So it was everything that a teenage boy would want. So you have to be able to trust that great literature is out there and you should find it. And keeping that journal, I mean, I keep the books because of my upbringing, and I'm like you, and I would rather have a hardbound book than a paperback. It's something about that experience of reading. If you're just reading on Google, if you're just reading off your phone, there's nothing wrong with that, except that you're missing the experience that I'm having. Now, maybe my experience is for a generation that is past. You need to be tracking your reading. You need to be building upon what you've loved when you read and what speaks to you so that you can continue. And there are lots and lots of helps out there online. Goodreads is one, and I know there are many, many others, where you can actually say, you know, if I like this book, what are some great suggestions of other books that I might like that are similar? I mean, we ran into a real problem with a whole generation of people who read Harry Potter, and they grew up and then they didn't have a book. Their entire youth, they had a book, a series, and they graduate from college and they didn't have any books. And they didn't know what to read next because Harry Potter made them readers and made them need to have something to read. That's magical. I'm so glad that happened. Though I was not a big reader of Harry Potter. I read the first one. I'm not sure I read them all. I saw all the movies. But because I'm also not that interested in the kind of fantasy world either. Give me a story about a real person who's going, or an imagined real person, who's going through something in life. Those are the stories that I enjoy. So if you are online, if that's where your reading is happening, devise ways that you can create a sacred bundle of your own online in a way to interact with that history of what you've read, and which can lead you to make good recommendations to others, to receive good recommendations from others as well. And it'll be interesting how you create that, whether it's just a list on an Excel sheet, or if it's a journal, however you're going to track that, please do, because it will make a difference later on.
Excellent, excellent. Because yes, it's very important. You should be able to track it backwards as well. But I think you are right at that point as well, that one thing that you're experiencing, I think that you should not forget that for ebooks or audiobooks, it's something that they need to have the experience of a paper book as well, something that they can hold in hand and then have a feeling or a connection with the book as well. So that becomes really, really important. John, this has been great. It seems like even though the time is, it's quite up. Yes, but I'm so glad, because actually felt like that it was like maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
I thought we had plenty of time left.
No, I'm just looking at the watch. I'm sorry, I was probably pondering here and there on my screen, because there are questions coming in as well live while you're having the session, but we can have those later ones as well. And because the time was going away very quickly too, but this has been one of the most brilliant sessions.
Thank you.
Most of the people are going to learn a lot from this, and it's very important that you do stay connected with us. Maybe after some time, whenever you have time, we talk more about books. We talk more about, because the most wonderful thing that I loved about you was that you have a story to connect with everything, which is amazing.
That's old age.
Oh no, it's experience, it's wisdom, it's packed up package that you've been there. And I knew it from the very beginning that this was going to be a wonderful session.
Oh,
So
I did
people,
too.
just oh, thank you very much. But I'm at the end as well, people. That we had with us today, of course, me, but John Bishop, and I'm just going to quickly review his profile, which I shared at the beginning, but I'm going to again share it with people who don't know or who joined in the middle of the session while we were talking about various things, various colorful things. So if you want to go, you can go back when this is all recorded and uploaded, but let me share that John was born in Houston. And the most amazing part, which, in the very beginning, I said as well, that he's got a versatile experience. He's super amazing because he's been traveling all his life, and he graduated from St. Thomas University. And he also did a lot of work in his master's degree from the University of Texas. He's a photographer, he's a creative writer, and he's been dealing with fine arts as well since college. And there has been a lot of versatility, a lot of years spent in libraries, 30 long years, and gone to a lot of libraries in Texas, New Mexico, California, Romania, New Zealand, Russia. So he's been there, he's gone through a lot in life, and that is the reason why John had so many stories to tell. So if you really want to enjoy his session, I think you should watch it since the very beginning. And it's very amazing that even besides his all the time working and full-time job, that he's blogging, he's writing poetry, he's doing children's literature, but at the same time he's doing a lot of hobbies as well, which we didn't really, John, we didn't tap on that. I really wanted to know that what kind of hobbies can be, is kind of let me put it in the right words, that how one can connect with a lot of hobbies when it comes to reading, and how we can make a very nice balance, a very compact balance, and how these two very different things, or maybe not so very different things, can come in line and become a part of our lives. I wanted to discuss this as well, but I'm sorry, unfortunately the time is quite up. He loves to paint as well, people, and so all kinds of colors you're going to see in John. And this has been a very nice, brilliant session, John, I must say. Now, I'm not just saying it because you're here and we're facing each other, but I'm certainly, and we keep on looking for people who have this kind of experience so that we can also connect with. But this has been one of the most wonderful sessions I've really conducted. I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful, really grateful. So thank you very much for your time, John. I hope you're going to have a very safe time as well with these, changing times of COVID.
Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. At any time, happy to come back.
Yes, I would really, really appreciate if you do that. Thank you very much, John. Have a very safe time. Take care.
Bye now.